Hello and welcome to the R Silent Podcast. I am your host, Evin with the silent R, and today we have a Valentine's Day special episode with my beautiful wife, Penelope. Welcome to the show, Penelope.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. And before we get started with the show, she is our lovely sponsor of tonight's show. So please tell us a little bit about your business so the people know where to find you.
Of course. Again, my name is Penelope. I am the CEO and founder of Her Point of View Studio. I have a home-based beauty studio where I specialize with brows and body waxing. You can find me on Instagram at herpointofview.studio, and we are in the works of having a booking link and a website out, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for being our sponsor of today's show. If anyone out there wants to be a sponsor on the next show, just message me on the R Silent Podcast. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So excited to have this conversation. I hope you are too. So we're going to do a quick introduction to start the show. I want you to tell the people your age, your background, what you do for a living, and your relationship status.
Sure. So I am 26 years old. From Dominican descent, Afro-Latina. What was the next question?
Yeah, what do you do for a living?
So I am a beauty connoisseur. I'm an entrepreneur.
Awesome. And your relationship status?
And I am a icy wifey.
So today our topic of conversation is going to be, should you get married in 2023? I don't know how many people out there know, but for those new that are listening, we just recently got married. So we've been married now for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a pretty amazing ride. We've been together for 4 years. And we're going to share our story of how we got together and why we decided to get married. So you can ask yourself if you should be getting married in 2023, because I feel like the way that we got married is very different and unconventional. And we made great decisions to decide to be together and do it the right way versus waiting and living together and not following the way that we both believe within our Christian faith, how things are supposed to be done in relationships. So would you like to start by telling the people from your point of view, from when we first met up until we got married, what was that like for you? What was your experience being together with this beautiful man right here?
I'm blushing, y'all. Yeah, of course. So, again, as Evan mentioned, we've been together for about almost 4 years now. It's definitely been a roller coaster. As I like to say, nothing good comes easy, and if it comes easy, then it's probably not that good. So I actually met him through a cousin of mine, which is his best friend. And we met at his baby shower. So the coming of a new life into the world, which I think is like pretty ironic. And so that was the day we met. After that, we exchanged Instagrams later that night. He DM'd me. It took me a couple days to reply because, you know, sometimes you got to play hard to get.
Stress me out.
I also don't think, well, not that I thought anything of it, but I also wasn't like ready for anything at that part of my life. So it was just like whatever. Like it was just like a fun time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he DM'd me, set up a date like right away. He was on it, like set up a date, knew what he wanted. And we had our first date, like a week, maybe two later? Maybe
Yeah,
two.
I think it was like after you replied, after like 3 days, we set up the date like the
Like a
week
week
after.
later. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So about 2 weeks later, we went to Denny's, which was really nice. It was like a 12 a.m. breakfast, like a dinner
it's
for
late night.
breakfast for late night breakfast. So that was really nice. And even something, I don't know if you want to get into that, like maybe not for tonight, but a super traumatic event happened in Evan's family that night. And I think that's also what allowed us to bond really quickly, because it was either like, okay, I'm either out of here and good luck with that, or I'm like if we locked in, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just
You were definitely
there.
supportive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was either I was supporting or I was like not here for it.
Mm.
And again, he was a really nice guy. He was a really good guy. He was different than all the other guys that I've spoken to or dated. And the big factor for me was that he was my older cousin's best friend. So now I'm looking at it like I can't play around because then my older cousin's gonna like know what I'm up to and what kind of girl I am, and like I didn't really want all my business out there. So
Hmm.
it was good though. He was nice, like genuinely, authentically, like we just clicked, like everything
Yeah.
just flowed. I think.
Yeah, and I don't mind sharing, but my brother had got shot.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a crazy night. I went from feeling like I had the best day in the world to like one of the worst things that can possibly happen to my family. And when you meet a girl for the first time and you're vulnerable like that, and she receives it in a very comfortable way, it was very comfortable for me, and it made me like you a lot more. So kudos to you for being that type of girl and showing me that you can be supportive. You got some check marks that day, so that was very
Brownie
awesome.
points.
Yeah. So just getting back to the story. So we met. You told everyone how we met. How did we start dating from your perspective? I know for you, you weren't ready to start a relationship when we first started dating, and I feel like I asked you to be with me in a very interesting way. I typically don't ask girls to be with me in that way. I think you still kept the love contract that I gave to you the day we decided to get together. And I made you
Yeah,
sign
I'll
that
show
thing.
that
But
to
you
y'all
didn't
one
even
day.
want to sign it on the first time that I asked you. You need time to think about it. So tell the people, what were you going through? What was going through your mind? You've been dating me now. I think it was about 3 months, going on 4 months, What made you decide, what, I'm going to take a chance on this relationship with this guy, even though going into it, I wasn't quite ready?
Hmm. That's a good question. So I like to say he doesn't really like to admit it, but I finally accepted to be his like girlfriend. I think like on the third time you asked me, because he asked me like a month in of dating, and this was like we was seeing each other a lot. Like it wasn't like a month but we only saw each other like once every week. No, it was like every other day at this point. Um a month in, I was like, like I think we should take it slow. And then like 2 months
I don't really
in,
think it was a month. I felt like it was longer. You seem to always think
no,
it
it
was
was
a
a month.
month,
And then
but
like a month after that, he was like, okay, well, how do you feel now? Like, and I was like I still wasn't ready.
I
Like
was excited.
nobody's ever really ready. Like I was telling myself that I wasn't like about that life right now. Like I was living a very completely different life at that time. And like, our relationship just wasn't like an exciting like thing for me. Like I didn't deem it necessary at that time of my life.
Hmm.
And then the third month later, like obviously, we're seeing each other a lot at this point, and my cousin knows like that we're seeing each other. And I'm sure at this point, like my mom knew, and you still lived at home, so your mom and your brothers are seeing me like pretty
Yeah,
often,
yeah.
and your nieces. And after that, I was like, all right, fine. Like, I'm not gonna say like, okay, fine. Like I had to like dreadfully fine, but I was like, okay, like let's give this a shot. Like, why not?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So now you've dated me for what was it, a year and a half before we got engaged? So what was the experience like for you prior to getting engaged? Going through the experience of like going ring shopping. I know that was obviously a new thing for you. You'd never done that. And then up until the point you got engaged, and what was that experience like for you? How did you feel being asked to be married?
so again, I'd like to mention that ever since I met, so like the night I met Evin, things were really different. Like the way he spoke, his mindset, just the way he carried himself. So I guess talking about marriage came pretty, like, I feel like a year and a half, like, is pretty quick, to be honest. I would always say, like, as a young girl, like, no, I have to be with somebody, like, 4 or 5 years before he, like, gets down on one knee, right? Before you think
Mm-hmm.
you really know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But now I say, like, I even sometimes, like, you don't know somebody till you really know them. Like, it really be, though, not to change the conversation, but those
Mm-hmm.
documentaries with the serial killers, it be like the same guy that's been married for 80 years with the woman, and they've had the same neighbors for 40 years, and he's like, oh, that was the nicest man ever, and that was the one that murdered the whole city. Like, you don't really
Well, I
know
don't think I was
anybody
like
till
a
you. No,
murderer,
not at all. But that's why I
but
didn't want to change the topic. But it just came to say, like, a
mm-hmm.
year and a half later, and people are like, oh, wow, you're getting engaged to somebody. Like, even for me. But we had spoken about it. Like, I think at that point, even he was at an age where he knew what he wanted. And I think that helped me kind of see and envision this life that I wanted, because there I saw this man and I connected with this man that I guess we could say, like, you had your life figured out, or you
Mm-hmm.
had your career. I could see one of the big things I always say, just to kind of back it up a little bit, a month or two before I met Evin, I went to this all females church event, and it was one of the first times ever that they had it was an activity, like an experiment, where they gave us a sheet of paper and said, write down all the qualities that you want to see in your future husband, like,
Mm-hmm.
nothing really like physical or anything, but just characteristics, like what you want from him or what you want to see in him, whatever. And when I met you and started to date you, you would literally like check those things off daily, like, if not 100% of the list, it was probably like a 99, so
Mm-hmm.
that was
That's a
one
good thing,
thing when we
guys.
would
That's a good thing.
when we would talk about our future. Your vision and your dream and your goal sounded a lot different than the men I've been with before. It
Mm.
sounded, I
I was
sounded
mature.
comfortable and secure. Yeah, I guess you could say you was mature.
Mm-hmm.
So then it made me, I also come from like a family, like a religious Christian family. And I always, as a little girl, I guess some people, if not every girl, has this like idea or this dream of a wedding, a marriage, a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could say that I had that, and I started to envision that and see that with you. Like, I could say, when people would ask me, oh, what do you like about Evan? It wasn't just like, oh, his hair, his smile. It was more like, I think he'll be a great father to my children. Like, or when I brought you to church, like, and you were so accepting and receiving of that, like, and
Mm-hmm.
our lives started to come together. So we spoke about marriage pretty quickly, to answer your question,
Yeah.
and we started going ring shopping, all of that stuff. We spoke about all those things. You had gone to my family, like, he really like did his dirt.
Guys, before she continues, I just want to say, guys, when you're going to go and marry a girl, and I learned this from my father, you go and you ask the parents first before you marry the girl. That shows them respect and shows them that you're a man who knows what he wants and he's taking charge and taking the hand of a woman. And their family and my family truly respected me for doing that. And that's something my father always taught me, that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to learn that before they get engaged. So that's a piece of advice for you guys out there. But yeah, please
A little
continue.
thing that goes a long way, especially because my dad barely speaks English, so you could already imagine how that conversation with them went.
I actually said it in Spanish, if I recall, right? I had to write it down on my notes and read it out to him. My Spanish has improved since then, so thank God.
But yeah, where was I? We went ring shopping. Like, we spoke about those things. He knew what I wanted. He knew what I liked. And then, yeah, it was just kind of in the air, and it just happened. Like, it was like the ball was in both of our courts, or the ball was in your court, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it just, yeah, when God's timing, I think.
Well, it sounds like it was a great experience for you. How did it feel to actually have a ring on your finger and have people come up to you and be like, "Wow, you're engaged"? What was that like for you?
I think it was really surreal at the beginning of it, especially I don't know if it's this generation or just like the people just looking at me and being like, oh, wow, like you're so young. Or even like just me to say, like being with this man a year and a half, I was like, oh, wow, like I'm engaged. Like, do I
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of this, or am I like, like
Am I ready for this?
engaged? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Mm-hmm.
like hit home after a little bit.
Mm.
Um, but it was definitely a surreal feeling. It was like it was my first time ever going through an experience like this, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was coming. I had always told Evin, like, do not ever propose on like a special holiday like my birthday,
I
Christmas,
had to
New
take
Year's
advantage.
Eve. And obviously, he chose my birthday,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. Like, now that I know, his thoughts and why, the reasoning, whatever, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It worked
Um,
out well for me, I
yeah,
would
it
say.
worked out well. It was great. It was great. We also, I think that's really when things, I don't want to say hit the fan, but that's when really, I don't want to like what push came to shove. I don't know. Like I feel
Are you
like
speaking about
our
the
relationship, our
after?
dynamic, like right after we got engaged, like
Mm-hmm.
things really started to get serious, and I
Yeah.
feel like it was like it wasn't just a honeymoon phase. Like after that,
Mm.
it was like okay, like real life started to happen. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't just the idea or a pretty ring or like all
Mm.
these things. It was like okay, we're getting ready to be married, and not just about this big fancy wedding, like because that's not even what we did at all. It was more like, are we ready to be married, like mentally, emotionally? Was I speaking about myself, um so I feel like that was a lot too.
Yeah. And then the pandemic happened,
Mm-hmm.
and that really changed the dynamic of our relationship. We were stuck at home together all the time.
That's why.
So, I can imagine how challenging that was for the both of us. And there was a period of time where you felt that you just needed a different change of environment. So, what was that experience like for you? What did you learn in that experience um, up until the point you got married?
Yeah, so I guess just another little detail was that I guess not to say I guess yeah, it was a mutual understanding. This the I guess let me just get right into it. But we decided
We took a break
to
from our
break up. Yeah,
relationship.
we took a
Yes,
break
yes.
from
It's
our
okay to say that.
relationship during our engagement. I even think, I guess it was harder for me to say at that moment when I was looking at, I wasn't necessarily like taking a break. It was more like we got engaged at, I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
I was 23 years old and engaged. And when again, the pandemic came, we didn't really have like stable plans of what this wedding was going to look
Yeah.
like.
Very
And
difficult to plan.
a lot of our, like, I don't know if to say our values were different,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
I guess our priorities, not so much our values, but our priorities were different when it came to the marriage and the celebration or that situation in itself.
Yeah.
Um, and I was still living at home after 2 years. So, like, we were engaged. I was 25 years old, still living at home. I've never really been independent. And I had realized or decided that I kind of wanted to feel some of that independence before I got married. I had to be honest with myself. I had to be really real, and just like put a mirror up to myself. And I had decided that I kind of wanted to like completely separate. I was going through a lot of changes and
A lot
just
of pressure.
yeah, a lot
There
of
was a lot of
pressure from different areas of my life. And my first thing was to just up and go. I felt like I was at an age where I could do that. I felt like I just needed a new like atmosphere, a new scenery, something.
Mm-hmm.
So I had decided to go to New York for 6 months in 2021. And that is what caused us to break our relationship, because I was engaged, felt like I still needed my independence. There was just a lot going on mentally, emotionally. I had to be honest with myself. I had to be honest with my fiance. I had to be honest with my family. And that led us to kind of going our own ways. I think those 6 months was something at the time we didn't realize that we needed. At the time, again, I didn't realize that it was a break. It was kind of like, okay, I'm giving your ring back and this is it. Like, it was kind of awkward. Like, what do you do? Like, I'm giving your ring back and what, you're going to give it back to me? Like, keep it, nah.
I kept it safe, actually. I could have sold it many times,
Could have
but I
sold
decided,
it,
you
not
know
the
what?
pawn
Let me
shop.
keep it safe. My mother actually told me not to sell it. She told me, like, it's better to keep it just in case you decide that this is the person you want to be with. You don't want to regret
Wow, I didn't know
selling that ring. So I didn't. So thank God I listened to my mother.
that. For once.
You know what I mean?
So yeah, I was gone. Like, I packed up my whole life, up and left, my friends, my life, my family, looking for my independence or whatever I thought that looked like. And we kept in touch. Like, I felt like this guy was really beyond our relationship and our engagement. And I feel like this guy had really had really been a part of a really important part of my life. And obviously, again, I've never been a fiance. Like, this guy was different. So we kept in touch. I always wanted to make sure he was good. Like,
Yeah, we definitely did keep in touch. Yeah.
regardless whether it was me or not, I just wanted him to be happy. But honestly, but obviously, he's the happiest he's been with me. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
No, I mean,
they
I
say
think
you
it
gotta
was a
let
worthwhile person to still chase after, So
yeah,
I
what do
didn't
they
wanna
say?
lose that.
Like, if you love something, you gotta let it go, and if
Mhm.
it comes back to you, then it was yours always, and if
Yeah.
not, then
100%.
yeah, I think that was a huge part of my spiritual life too, because I really just let that up to God. Like, people would be like, "Oh, so what are you gonna?" Like, God knows. I would literally be like, I really don't know. Like, I'm not opposed. I would always be like, I'm not completely done with him. Like, we would still keep in touch, but I'm also not thinking like, hey, yeah, we're gonna get back together. Like, that wasn't the point of our breakup. It was just like, I literally packed my life. Like, I was like, well, if my life works in New York, then I'm staying here. Peace, Toronto. Like, that was it for me.
Yeah, and I was okay with giving you the opportunity to go and experience that. I
But
didn't
God
feel
has
like it
other
was,
plans.
fair for me to force what I wanted onto you. And I'm glad that we were able to come back together. I came to New York. I got to pick you up. We got to see some family out there, and then we came back. We were back in Toronto, and I think we had gotten re-engaged at that point in time as well. So we were in a different dynamic, I would say. We've both come back with a different attitude towards the relationship. We both made a decision to continue to be together. So, from your perspective, leading up from when you first came back, because I think it was that same year you came back that we also got married. So, tell me or tell us.
No, it was the year after, actually.
Was it the year after?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I think I remember correctly.
I came back I came back November 27th. That was the exact date. Our 27th.
Yes.
I think 27, 26 or 27, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And right before Christmas of 2021.
Yes.
And we got married August 27th of 2022.
So it was November, December, January, New Year,
Yes,
and then you got
and
married.
Then we got married, yeah.
Right. So so at that point it's only been about 8 months since you've been back. Right. So what was going through your head? Your mother was in a different situation with the living situation when you had gone to New York.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an opportunity for you being engaged with me to make the decision to move in with me or to make your life in Ottawa with your family. So what was that experience like for you that led you to making the decision within that same year to marry me?
So, to bring up my religious Christian home and family and background, I had never lived with a man before. Again, I had never been independent. I never lived on my own. I never moved in with anybody, never had anybody move in with me. So, coming back from New York and trying to settle again, my mom was actually making moves to move to Ottawa. And that was something that really, again, I was engaged to my future husband, and he was staying in Toronto, and like my whole life was in Toronto. My business is set here, my friends, the rest of my family. And I think it was another big decision, another big step that I had to take in my life, just to just sit down with my mother, aka my best friend, and let her know and be honest and let her know that her values and her morals of like, you're not moving out until you're married, or you're never going to be on your
She's
own
very
until you're
strict.
married. In
Yeah.
that sense, yeah, she was
She
pretty
didn't
strict.
even let us like sleep in the same bed together, even though we were engaged when we went to like family parties. And I found that really strange about Dominicans because like we are engaged with me. Obviously, we have our relationship, but because of the Christian values are so strong within your family, and I learned that right away. Like
Yes, Evan
very
had a
very
lot
strong
of
values. So
conversations
like I
with my
had to
mother.
sleep on the couch while you're sleeping in a comfortable bed. And it was like very very nerve wracking. So it's pretty interesting dynamic.
Yeah, so I had to put my foot down and really, again, I had to put a mirror to myself and be honest. And it just made sense. Even times are different. My mom doesn't like to believe like, oh, the generations, like times have changed and whatever. But honestly, like I thought it would be best for our relationship dynamic as well. So like after everything we've been through, he was already living on his own. Like I'm not gonna go to Ottawa with you, Mom. So I also feel like I should live with Evin, or try living together before we get married and we decide this is what we want to do forever.
Yeah.
And I feel like she that also like brought us into another relationship. I mean, like
There's a
our
different dynamic.
relationship dynamic, like to
That
another
changed.
level, because I never really like put my foot down to my mom like that, or like after her telling you her values, trying to instill her values and her morals into you, you're not moving out till you're this or doing that or whatever. It was different for her, right? Like she didn't move out till she was married back then. That's really how it went.
Yeah. Traditional.
But we only lived together a few months before we actually got married, and I feel like that's something that inspired us to not have a traditional wedding. Like I have a dream, and I still do, of this big wedding that I know my husband will give me, which is just really the reception and the party for everybody else, because we're married. But I just wanted to be married, like even just living with him for those few months. And I always like I would really, till my face turns blue, like even before I had a serious boyfriend, I would be like, a girlfriend can't do like fiance things, and a fiance can't do wifey things. Like hello, like you want me to cook for you, you want me to clean for you, like you want me to do all this, but where's my ring? Like what? So it was, even though I was engaged, I felt like that was another test of our relationship, because there was a lot of arguments that we would have where I would be like, okay, but this is your house, so you clean it, or like I'm just your fiance, like I'm not, you're here too, you can't cook your dinner, like and I feel like
it was a struggle at first.
It was a struggle.
I
It
think
was
for me,
very
I
different
didn't
for me.
realize how different, or what our expectations were different from our partners, and it took some communication and some time to figure out. But I do want to quickly just backtrack to the point you were making around us getting married shortly after, and you living with me and not wanting to live together and not be married. And I just wanted to share a point of my thought process. And for me, prior to being in a relationship with you, I had been in relationships with other women that I lived with, and I was not married to them, obviously. And the relationship really suffered from living with a person prior to marriage. But when you're young and you're trying to find your own place, and the market is really difficult here in Toronto, you're thinking, oh, let me just live with a person and rush to live with a person, just to get that extra support, financial support, versus living with a person because you're ready, and that that you're marrying that person. So it made it a lot easier for me to say to myself, okay, if I'm living with this person this time, I've learned from previous experiences that living with the person, not being married to them, creates a different dynamic. That I don't feel that I feel now that I'm married to somebody and living with them, because when I'm married and I'm living with somebody, I'm investing in that person, I'm paying for things and taking care of that person because I know this is the person I'm married to, versus you're investing all that time and energy into a person and then you end up not being with them. All that time and energy was meant nothing, right? And as a guy, I always aim to be a provider and being able to take care of my wife and my partner. So, for me, I was in a position within my life and within my career where I said, you know what, I'm in a position where I can actually have a family right now. I can actually take care of a partner. I can be the provider that I want to be. I was set up within my life where I said, okay, I'm ready for this. And of course, I'm much older, right? So for me, I knew the direction that the relationship was going to go, and that's why I had made the decision to get engaged because I already knew where the relationship was going. I knew what the plan was. I have a firm belief in what God has in store for me, and I want to be able to do things the right way, which I feel like people don't think about doing it the right way. They just do it for the right now. And I've learned a lot from taking the time to go to church and be around other like-minded men who are married and who are young just like me, and they're figuring it out themselves of how to be married in this world where people tell you being married is a really bad idea. So I thought it was a really great experience to just up and get married. And I would love for you to share with the people, what was it like for you, the wedding day. Take us through the world of Penelope in that moment, getting yourself ready. The date was set. We actually decided on the date. Like, we went to Ottawa. And then prior to the years, we had changed the date, I think, like 3 times. Right. And then we finally decided after we went on a trip to Ottawa that, what, let's go and do this. Right. Which I thought was a really interesting conversation. So share from your perspective what that conversation was like, and then take us through the wedding day. What was it like for you to know, like, hey, I'm about to do this? Were you nervous? Were you scared? Take us through it.
Actually, now that you bring it up, I remember that conversation, that 4 hour and a half car ride home from my mom's. We just decided, like, really, like, what are we waiting for? Like, this whole party and everything is for everybody. Like, our priorities are different, like, why would we have spent all this money in one night for everybody when we could invest the same amount of money into, like, a down payment on a home and, like, come home to a comfortable home and, like, start a home for our family. So we just, I guess, we thought we saw the bigger picture. I also didn't feel like we have I have a huge family, and for me to have everybody there and to have, it took 2 years to plan my sweet 15. And I was like, okay, I'm living with this man, and, like, my mom's looking at me live with this man, and I'm not married, and my family's looking at me live with this man. And not that I'm really the type to care what people think, but for me it was more like God's looking at me live with this man and I'm not married. For me it was more that besides anything else, and just the relationship that I had with God, and just, like, it was deeper than that for me. So it was just something I wanted to do. And before, we would have conversations where it was just like, oh, but marriage is just like a paper and you just sign and it was a paper. And I remember the conversation you and my mom had that one time where they were literally, like, almost beefing.
I would say beefing, but we heavily disagreed.
Yeah, it was like, it was big. But eventually, like, I think it also opened up a different perspective to you as well, that it wasn't just about the paper. It was deeper than that. It was about the relationship. It was about the, like, just your faith and your values and your morals and, me being able to love you correctly and, like you said, doing things the right way. Like, I'm not just, like, I don't want to say here, there's a right and a wrong way, right? Like,
I just think that, in order to build a family, I think the family unit is better when both parents are involved.
And I guess that comes from foundation. Married. I think that I don't want to say, like, there's a right and a wrong way to do anything. Like, times have changed. Nobody is perfect. Like, we're all humans. It's just more of, like, where the principle, right? Like, where the Bible comes from, and to see all the family dynamics in this world now, and to see mine growing up and where I come from, and I just wanted to do things differently. I wanted to feel better and be my
Feel more
best self.
comfortable
Yeah,
living with
feel
a
more
person, knowing like
comfortable.
you have that security,
Yeah,
you know,
that commitment.
that commitment.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So now it's the wedding day.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
the wedding day, the wedding day.
yes.
Aw.
What was that like for you? I mean, I could share what it was like
You
for me
like
really
you
quick.
could, yeah, you could.
Yeah, yeah, and then you can go. But for me, I was nervous. I was so nervous. You know, I had never imagined myself having a wedding. You know, I never grew up in a family that went to a lot of weddings. Actually, prior to our wedding, and the recent one we went to, I've never been to a wedding before in my life. So I had no experience with weddings, and then I'm here at my own wedding. You know, so it's like wow. But for me, it was like very very nerve wracking. But it would help to have my family there, my brothers there to support and to support my decision to go forward with it. I think it was a really big thing for me, and I spent a lot of time just telling them and encouraging them and helping them to understand my reasonings and why I'm making this decision in my life and how confident I was within myself to make this decision. You know, I wasn't making this decision out of blind love. I was more so making this decision for the betterment of my family that I'm looking to create because I'm in a position within my life that I can start a family and I know how to lead a family. So it made me feel really happy that they agreed and they believed in me and they supported
Supported.
me and was there for that event. And you were so beautiful that day, you know. And I went down with our beautiful dog. You know, he was there with me. And quick funny story: I was riding, you know, to come see you. You know, I'm driving down, I'm playing my music. I got my white suit on. Bass got his white suit on, and Bass
Bae's
got his
our
head out
dog.
the window. Baster, yes. He's got his head out the window, and people see him and I driving through, and they're like honking, and they're like, "Wow, you're getting married. That's lit. You guys look cool. Your dog is so cute. You look so great, bro. Go kill it." You know. So like for me, hearing it in that moment, I knew God was there, just like smiling down on me. He was happy about the decision that I made. That's why every person that saw me that day was smiling. You know, it was God smiling through them. You know,
Aw.
so it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful day,
Love
and
that.
yeah, man, I signed that paper. I got married. Yeah, yeah. What about for you? What was that experience like?
um, I think I really cherish how we did our wedding because I had a huge quinceañera, Sweet 15. And I think even just like I said, those receptions, those parties are really for like everybody. Like yes, I had the best. Like my
Mm-hmm.
quinceañera was one of the best days of my life
Yeah.
because I was the center of attention. But that like the dance that we rehearsed for months on end, like the food that we chose, the open bar that we had. Like, girl, I was 15 years old. I did not have one drink that night. Like, it wasn't for
Mm-hmm.
me. It wasn't for my friends. It was for my family, and like you know, it was great. But I think the wedding is kind of the same thing, and
Yeah.
I feel like on top of the pressure of all of that, like you're planning something like this for months, for years. It costs a lot of money. Everybody always wants, like, you know, everything to be perfect. You put all this planning into it. You're also getting married legally and like spiritually to this person. And there's just a lot of emotion and pressure onto that day. But for us, it wasn't like, what did we do? Like, we literally just went to City Hall, signed a paper, went to an all you can eat after, and like there was no pressure. Like I just felt my best self. So I feel like it removed that for like 50% of the pressure that you
Mm-hmm.
should have or that people usually do have on a day like that. I had my favorite like makeup and hairstylist. My mom was there with me the whole day.
Yeah.
Like I feel like also God ordained that day where it was just like how people say my wedding day turned out
The sun was
perfect.
even shining
It
too.
was like it was just a beautiful day. People came in, walked in on like the right last second. Like everything just happened as it should.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like I'm really happy the way we did things, and
We even went to the place we had our first date, and
yeah,
we
we
did a
did check
photo
out my
shoot. So
Instagram on
yeah,
that. We did a
check that
little
out on
photo
her
shoot
point
where
of
we
view.
had our first day at Denny's
Yeah,
on our
it's a
wedding
beautiful
day.
photo. I
That was
love that
it.
photo. I want to get it framed. Yeah. Wow,
Want
so
some
that was
more?
a really amazing story. You know, thanks for sharing that with the people and
Yeah.
being so open with your experience.
Thank you.
We're gonna go
That
ahead
was
and
fun.
wrap up and just wrap things up. So, from your perspective, now that you've been married for 6 months, was it the right decision? Do you feel good about your decision? Have you been happy since you've been married?
I do. One of the things people always ask me, like, how does it feel to be married? How does it feel to be a wife? Like, did anything change? You guys were already living together. And honestly, after our mini honeymoon, like, I feel like walking into our home after our wedding, our marriage, our bond with God, like I did feel different. I felt like a wife. I wanted
Wow.
to cook more. I wanted to clean more. Like I had a husband.
You felt the responsibility.
Yeah, and I feel blessed. Like when people say, "Oh, does it feel different? How do you feel?" Like I feel blessed. Like I feel like God is blessing my marriage with my husband and I because we decided to do things his way and walk in his purpose and make God a priority and a foundation in our relationship.
Wow. So, how do you feel about people asking you, like, don't you feel like you're too young to be married? Like, how do you feel about that?
I feel like everybody, not to say that your question is invalid, like once upon a time, people actually used to get married even younger just because of the
Mm-hmm.
times, but the way the generations are and things
Mm-hmm.
are different, times have changed, which is fine, but I feel like I'm at a comfortable age. Honestly, if people ask me, like when I got engaged at 23, like maybe I did love the idea of it, like not to say I wasn't ready at that age, but at this age, like I feel like I made the right decision. I feel like God blessed it. Like he ordained all these, it's not just me. I'm not doing it for me, for my like human
Mm-hmm.
flesh, for that pleasure, like those worldly things. Like
Mm-hmm.
that insane comment I got under my like wedding post of like, "Oh wow, you didn't even post your husband. Like did you just get married for the clout?" And I was like, "Are you crazy? Like it's not cheap to get married, bro.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not
People always
fun and
have their
games."
opinions, you
So
know.
yeah, I really feel like
Mm.
I did the right thing and
Good,
I'm
good.
happy.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Any final words you want to share with the people? Any advice that you would give somebody if they're thinking to themselves, should they get married this year? Should they get married in 2023? What advice would you give them being a newly married woman?
I think, and I always tell people to just be authentically you. Like, live in firstly God's purpose, like whatever He has, whatever that is for you. As long as you are happy, you are at peace. And people might always say, like, oh, are you ready? Are you this and that? Like, just do it for you, for your family, to break those generational curses.
Mm,
Like, don't
powerful.
worry about what anybody else has to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people don't know better, right? A lot of people we don't even really know. Every day we're learning something different about each other,
Yeah,
about
yeah,
ourselves.
for sure.
So as long as it's like genuine from the bottom of your heart, and I always talk to God before any decision I make, anything.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I feel like, I get the green light, the go ahead, then I'm walking in my purpose and I'm just authentically me. Like, that's just me.
That was amazing. Perfectly said. And I would say that to those out there thinking if they should get married in 2023, is that marriage is a choice. You know, you get to choose if this is something you want to do with your life. But do it if you're in a position that you feel you're ready to be married. You know, because being married is not a joke. You know, it's a very serious thing. But if you're looking to be with the person that you love for the rest of your life, I think you need to take the marriage aspect of things really seriously. And I think a lot of guys should take the opportunity to learn more about their partner, learn more about masculinity, learn
About
more about
themselves.
themselves, being a leader. You know, I think for me, in the time that I had spent away from our relationship, I realized that being a leader and being able to stand first in front of the world for your partners is a very powerful place to be as a man, you know. And I grew up in a family dynamic where my mother was the leader, you know. So for me, I never knew while being in a relationship the type of leader I needed to be because I had not learned that. So I had to learned that through trial and error, you know. And now that I'm in a place where I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, you know, I felt very comfortable in my decision to get married. So if anyone out there is asking me, like, hey, should I get married? I would say yes. You know, if you are a believer, or if you think within your mind and within your life that you can take care of a family, that you do have the ability to manage a household, provide for a household, lead a household, that is when you make the decision to get married. Not because of how you feel about your partner. Of course, it's important that you love your partner and you feel like, you know, she's the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. But you also need to make sure that you know that it's the right decision for you as well, and that you are capable to provide them with the security that your partner needs to be able to bring children into the world, and for them to feel secure, for them to feel like you're committed to the growth of the relationship. And I think a lot more guys need to lead that process versus waiting for their girl to tell them about how that process is going to work. You know, and it's amazing when you have a partner who you can feed off of, and you know, she fulfills the parts where you're lacking, you know. And when you have a partner like that, luckily I have one that's like that. So for me, I know from my experience how easy it is to figure out things going forward, you know, when you can sit and talk to your partner and plan for the future. So um, yeah, I just wanted to drop those tidbits in there so that those guys out there that are asking themselves, should I get married? You know, take the time and think about that, and to think about what type of foundation are you bringing the woman into? Do you already have the home? Have you built that home first before she was able to come in and add value to your life? And that's how you're going to get the most out of your relationship and the most out of your marriage, for you two to be able to work together. So take that advice, and I hope everyone out there gets the opportunity to be in a beautiful marriage with a beautiful woman, with a beautiful life, and hopefully some beautiful children someday soon. And thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch the R Silent podcast. We're going to have a new episode coming up soon. So follow our Instagram page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The links are available below with all the Instagram pages. Also follow our sponsor, Her Point of View Studios. She mentioned it in the beginning of the video, so go ahead and follow her. She's really great at waxing and brows, ladies. So if you really need to get your work done, trust me, this is a brow master, #1 in the city. People just don't know because, you know, she's still not booming yet. But once you get your first wax from her, or you get your brows done by her, shoot, you're going to be back for more. So go ahead and follow. Is there any final words you want to share with the people?
No, just thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to maybe come back for another episode or something. Stay
Definitely have
tuned,
you back.
guys. Happy Valentine's Day. And
Happy
that's
Valentine's
it.
Day.
Have a good night.